Do you want damage like this? Then you've come to the right place. Hutao is an amazing pyro DPS to build and can really help you push through some of those spiral abyss chambers you've been meaning to get through. Not only that, but she's also relatively easy to build and works well in a number of different team compositions. If you'd like to learn more about building characters or need some advice, then drop by my Discord or subscribe to the channel where I'll be posting even more guides.
What the dog doing?
So first, let's talk about Hutao's playstyle and her talents. Hutao is an on-field pyro DPS that's able to convert her HP into a large amount of attack. Stats like attack percent do increase her overall damage, but HP percentage can actually provide almost double of what attack percentage can, making it a better choice when building her. Hutao also specializes in fighting enemies more individually rather than doing larger AoE damage, like some other pyro characters. Let's start with her elemental skill. Hutao's elemental skill consumes a portion of her HP and enters parameter papilio mode. In this mode, Hutao can gain an attack bonus which scales up her HP to a maximum of 400% of her base attack, which is the attack number without any bonuses added on. Hutao converts all of her normal attacks to pyro elemental damage, which can't be overridden by any other elements. It also increases Hutao's resistance to combo interruptions, and when doing charged attacks it applies the Blood Blossom status on enemies, which enemies can only be affected by one at a time. Enemies that are affected by this Blood Blossom status will continuously take pyro damage every 4 seconds until Hutao leaves the field. This elemental skill is really useful when pulling off your elemental burst, as it will give you a massive attack boost before dealing the blow. Hutao's elemental skill also works best when doing charged attacks, as it allows you to get the maximum amount of damage off. But you will have to keep an eye on your stamina, as it gets consumed very quickly if you don't have your Hutao at C1. Meaning you'll have to learn how to control your stamina or learn techniques like jump cancelling. Hutao's elemental burst is called Spirit Soother, which casts a blazing spirit that deals AoE pyro damage. When it successfully hits, Hutao will regenerate a portion of her HP up to 5 times. If the burst is cast when Hutao's HP is below 50%, her attack buff and HP regeneration will be triggered, which is why it's important if you're going for maximum damage to have your Hutao below 50% health to allow you to get higher numbers. Hutao's normal attack is pretty standard and can perform 6 consecutive strikes with her polearm, with the damage increasing on each strike. Her charged attack consumes 25 stamina, dealing massive damage to enemies. As for what order you should level your talents, I suggest prioritizing your elemental burst and also her elemental skill, as they are both essential to being able to deal a massive amount of damage. With the normal attack talent being the last one you should level, as it is pretty good for boosting attack damage, but it doesn't really help with any of your elemental abilities.
Osmanthus wine tastes the same as I remember.
For Hutao's Constellations, if you're planning on using it all the time, then obviously get as many of her Constellations as possible. But here is how each of them can affect her gameplay. At C0, Hutao is a very technical character, as when you're using her, you'll be mainly using her charged attacks to deal a huge amount of damage. But as I mentioned earlier, this consumes 25 stamina, meaning that you'll lose your stamina very quickly, and that you only have a limited amount of attacks. One way to reduce this is by learning to jump cancel, by doing a normal charged attack but jumping halfway through the charged attack animation, dealing the same amount of damage but using less stamina, which can be quite technical for new players. This is why her C1, called Crimson Bouquet, is a big help, as when Hutao is in her parameter papilio state, she doesn't consume any stamina when doing charged attacks, which allows you to do a lot more damage in quick succession and allows you to do dash cancels instead of jump cancels. Hutao's C2, Ominous Rainfall, increases the damage from Blood Blossom by an amount equal to Hutao's max HP, and also allows her elemental burst to apply the Blood Blossom effect. Hutao's C3, Lingering Carmine, adds 3 levels to her elemental skill, which is useful as your elemental skill is her most used ability. Hutao's C4 isn't very useful for you, but her C4, Garden of Eternal Rest, when defeating an enemy affected by Blood Blossom that Hutao's applied, all nearby enemies in the party will have their crit rate increased by 12% for 15 seconds, but this isn't very important for a solo Hutao build. Hutao's C5, Floral Incense, adds 3 levels to her elemental burst, which is like her C3 and is also very useful if you're going for large amounts of damage. Hutao's C6, Butterfly's Embrace, triggers when Hutao's health drops below 25%, or when she suffers a lethal strike. Hutao will not fall as a result of this damage, and instead her elemental and physical resistance is increased by 200%, and her crit rate is increased by 100%. with her resistance to interruption being greatly increased as well. This effect automatically triggers when Hutao reaches 1 HP and can be used every 60 seconds, making Hutao effectively immortal every 60 seconds. Meaning this is a very useful constellation to have. For Hutao's weapons, you have quite a few choices when running different teams. Firstly, for the 5-star weapons, the Staff of Homa is by far her best weapon, as it can provide Hutao with a large amount of crit damage. The effects on the Staff of Homa also help her a ton, as it increases her HP by 20%, and also provides an attack boost based on 0.8% of Hutao's max HP. And when her HP is less than 50%, the attack bonus is increased by an additional 1% of her max HP, which is really good for Hutao as she converts her HP to damage, meaning that you will get the attack boost from the extra HP, but also have another attack boost from having high HP, making it her best option overall. The Primordial Jade Wing Spear can also be a pretty decent option, as it gives you some extra crit rate with its effects building up your attack by 3.2% on each hit, which when hitting the maximum possible amount of stacks, your damage is increased by 12%, which is pretty decent when you're consistently attacking with your charged attacks. Another 5-star option would be the Staff of Scarlet Sands, as it offers a lot of crit rate. But also the effect increases Hutao's attack by 52% of her elemental mastery, which is useful as Hutao will need a lot of elemental mastery anyways, in teams like Vaporize. It will also further increase her attack bonus by 28% of her elemental mastery when using your elemental skill, which as I've mentioned before, you have to use a lot. As for 4-star weapons, an R5 Dragon's Bane can work very well, mostly in Vaporize teams, as it gives Hutao the elemental mastery she needs to pull off a massive amount of Vaporize damage. The effect also increases damage against opponents that are affected by Hydro or Pyro by 36%, which the enemies will obviously be affected by in a Vaporize team. The Deathmatch is also a great weapon for Hutao, as it's much more flexible than the Dragon's Bane, as it can work with many other teams such as a Melt team. The effect that the weapon gives is a 16% attack boost when there are at least 2 opponents nearby, and is increased by 24% when there are less than 2 opponents nearby. This is great for Hutao as she tends to fight a smaller amount of enemies. The Deathmatch is also good as it's quite easy to get R5 as you receive it in the Battle Pass, so you're practically guaranteed it if you get enough levels. If you have nothing else to work with, then the White Tassel is a pretty good 3-star weapon to use, as it provides you with the crit rate that you need while also increasing your normal attack damage by 48%, but I would only use this weapon if you really don't have anything else. Now for Hutao's artifacts. Hutao's scaling is based on HP that is converted to attack multipliers, which are then affected by crit stats and pyro damage, which can then also be affected by elemental mastery when using vaporize reactions. Vaporize is one of the best damage dealing reactions for Hutao, so you need to prioritize getting around 100 to 200 elemental mastery, with 150 being a solid amount. As for the artifact sets, the Crimson Witch of Flame set is by far her best set, as it increases her pyro damage by 15% while also increasing vaporize and melt damage by 15%. And it doesn't just end there, as when using your elemental skill, it increases the 2-piece effect, which is 15% by 50% for 10 seconds, which is super useful for your elemental skill charged attacks. But it's also useful for your elemental burst, as when using your skill before you get your burst off, it will increase the amount of pyro damage you deal. Other sets that may be beneficial are sets such as the Shimanar's Reminiscence and Gilded Dreams, which can increase stats like attack percent and elemental mastery, which is useful for Hutao, but honestly the 4-piece Crimson Witch of Flame should be your only option, as you more than likely aren't going to be able to reach the same amount of damage you would with these other sets. For the stats on your artifacts, for your sands you'll want to use HP percentage or elemental mastery, depending on how low you are on each of them. For the people using the Scarlet Sands, then you might want to use the elemental mastery piece, whereas the Dragon's Bane and Deathmatch users you would want to use the HP piece. As for the Goblet, you'll want to use pyro damage. You could use attack percentage or HP percentage on there if you haven't managed to farm any pyro damage pieces yet, but if you have literally any pyro damage piece then you should definitely use it, as it does a massive amount more for Hutao than attack or HP can. For the Circlet, you'll want to run either crit rate or crit damage as your main stat, as it gives you a massive boost on how much damage you're able to do. As crit rate is so important on Hutao, having a crit rate piece if you're low on it can massively affect how much damage you're outputting with Hutao. With the substats, you'll obviously want to be going for HP percentage, as it's converted to damage. You'll also want crit rate and crit damage, as they'll be what allows you to hit the big numbers. Elemental Mastery is also great, as it will help you get the needed amount of Elemental Mastery for Hutao, and potentially eliminates the need for an Elemental Mastery Sands piece. And finally, Energy Recharge is pretty decent too, as it allows your Hutao to get her burst off quicker, which is handy if you're going to depend on a burst. The overall stats you really want for Hutao can vary a lot depending on what you want to do, but I recommend keeping your max HP anywhere over 25,000 HP. Like I mentioned before, have your Hutao anywhere between 100 and 200 Elemental Mastery. For the crit rate, you want to have it well above 50%, and your crit damage needs to be anywhere above 150%. The more the better.
You, me, gas station. What are we getting for dinner? Sushi, of course.
I've mentioned quite a lot throughout this video the use of vaporize and other elemental reactions, but obviously Hutao can't do this all on her own. So here are some great team compositions that can really help you with small tasks like doing your commissions to the biggest of tasks like tackling floor 12 of the Abyss. Firstly, a great vaporize team for Hutao is Hutao, Yelan, Xingqiu and Zhongli. This is a great composition, especially for taking on Abyss floors. Yelan is a great option for a sub DPS as she's on the banner at the moment, meaning that she's really easy to get. And she can also do a lot of damage while also applying Hydro for the vaporize. If you want a good build for her, then be sure to check out my build guide on her. Xingqiu is also great for this team as he's very similar to Yelan, with him also being able to provide off-field Hydro damage, therefore applying extra Hydro to make sure you hit those vaporize reactions. Xingqiu is also on the current banner as well, meaning that you could obtain him when wishing for Yelan or going for a Hutao Constellation. Zhongli is also extremely useful for this team and is the best out of any Geo characters, providing shields which allow your Hutao to attack freely at low HP, while not worrying about being killed. If you don't have Zhongli, that's okay too, as he can easily be replaced by characters like Noelle or Ningguang, who can also provide shields, or even C4 Yanfei can help with her shields when using her elemental burst. There are plenty of other teams that you can use and you can swap certain characters around, but as long as you're getting that essential vaporize reaction, then you should be doing pretty well on damage. If you wanted to run something other than a vaporize team, melt teams work pretty well too, with characters like Ayaka, Shenhe and Rosaria which can replace Yelan or Xingqiu to be able to freeze opponents before attacking them with Hutao, creating a melt reaction.
Girl! Oh my god! I lost!
And now my final thoughts on Hutao. Hutao is a great pyro main DPS and can absolutely destroy Spiral Abyss floors with ease. Obviously this comes with being able to build her right, and with this guide you should be able to build your own amazing Hutao. I personally use her all the time and I've never got bored of seeing that massive 6-digit damage number come up on my screen. And not only is her playstyle great, she also has a brilliant backstory and character design. If you enjoyed this video and found that it helped, then please leave a like, and if you want to see more build guides then consider subscribing and even leaving notifications on so you never miss a video. And don't forget to follow me on all of my other socials, and I'll see you in the next video. See ya!
Thank you.